Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this session. My name is Anixis. I'm a trainer at U2U. We deliver IT trainings. We're actually located in Belgium, but we deliver our trainings everywhere in Europe. One of the trainings that I give there is related to Power BI. Some other trainings are related to PowerApps and Power Automate. So in this session, I would like to actually tell you about the integration between the three. So PowerApps and Power Automate, how we can use them in Power BI. So the agenda for this talk is that I will first start with an introduction of these three products, and then I will show you how to use a Power App in Power BI and how to use Power Automate in Power BI. And there I have two examples, one where I respond to a data-driven alert with a flow, and one where I refresh a Power BI data set with a flow as well. And then I will end with some conclusion. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. So Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate are three products that are part of the broader Power Platform. The Power Platform is a set of technologies that allows people to easily build low-code applications. As you may know, Power BI is a tool to build reports on top of business data. PowerApps is a tool to create rapid applications to rapidly create applications without a lot of coding needed. Power Automate is a tool to automate business processes also without a lot of coding. And finally, the Power Virtual Agents to create bots. That's not part of this presentation, but it is part of the Power Platform. And so all these products, they connect to different data connectors. They can connect to the common data service as well. And there is the AI builder that can be used to infuse Power Apps, for example, with some AI. Now, these products, when you use them together, they can really be super powerful. And one example of how they can be used together is Virgin Atlantic. Virgin Atlantic, an airline, they were doing their audit and their safety and compliance audits largely on paper and in SharePoint lists. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to change that, so they wanted to make sure that it could be done with these products of the Power Platform. So their solution was that they created a Power App for their engineers. They all had an iPad, so they used it on that iPad. And inside the Power App, the engineers could see their scheduled audits. They could fill in audit questions. They could record negative findings, and all of this information was then stored in SharePoint Online lists. Power Automate they use to email daily findings and actions to the manager, and to also email the schedules to the engineers. And then finally, they created a dashboard in Power BI on top of the SharePoint Online list, where they stored the data coming from the Power App. And in the dashboard, they showed statistics on the number of scheduled and completed audits. They visualized findings and room for improvement. So that was the last step of this process. So they could really see in real time, let's say, information coming from these Power Apps to improve their processes. So I think that's a good example of how the products can be used together and how they can be powerful in that way. But today I don't want to just talk about how they can be used together, but I really want to show you how you can use one product inside the other. More specifically, how you can use a Power App and Power Automate within Power BI. So we can use a Power App visual in Power BI, and we can trigger a flow based on a data-driven alert from Power BI. And there are some Power BI actions in Power Automate as well, where we can add rows to a data set or refresh a data set. And so these things I would like to discuss in my presentation. So don't leave if you like Power BI. If you're interested in it, if you know something about it already, that's what I assume that the people who are in this presentation at least know a little bit about Power BI, and if you're interested in how it integrates with these other products. All right, so let's shortly discuss then the features and benefits of Power BI. So as you all know, hopefully Power BI is a really good tool to explore your data visually. It's great for creating very interactive reports. I think very nice features and benefits of Power BI is that it's really easy to connect to all kinds of data sources and to transform them, if you like, using Power Query. After you've done that, you can load your data in a data model. And this data model you can create in such a way that it's reusable, that you can build multiple reports on top of it. With regard to this data model, you can choose to either store, to import your data from the data source. So let's say to make a copy and store it in your data model, or you can choose to use a direct query, meaning that you don't store the data inside your report, but you actually, every time you interact with a visual, you directly query the underlying data source. This has as an advantage that your data, the data is not stored in the data model, so it doesn't take up any space, and also you will always see the latest data in your report, because every time you interact with a visual, this direct query will be made. As I said, with Power BI, we can then create really interactive reports and dashboards, visuals, filter each other. A lot can happen in Power BI. It's a really good tool for that. And a very important feature for this presentation is that it integrates really nicely with other Office 365 products and Azure products. So mainly that first thing, other Office 365 or Microsoft 365, I should say, maybe. Products are things like PowerApps, Power Automate, what we will see in this presentation. PowerApps then, with PowerApps, the idea is that we can also connect to a really wide range of data sources and create an application on top of that data. This application we can then share with our team, and they can actually use it on any device. So features and benefits of PowerApps is, well, first of all, that they can connect to lots of data sources. Second, that they work on any device. It's also really easy and fast to create them, because there is a visual designer. You can drag and drop stuff, and you don't really need to write a lot of code. You may need to write some functions, some formulas, but it's not that you don't need to write like pieces of complicated code. Again, here, integration with other Office 365 products is really good and really important for this presentation. Okay, so let's talk then about using such a Power App inside a Power BI report. Why would you want to do that? Well, the cool thing is that when you have a Power BI report in which you show some data, derive some insights, if you add a Power App directly inside that report, you can actually use the Power App to take action right from within your report. And you could even show the results of that action. So the results that it has on the data, it can be immediately visualized in your report as well. So really directly from within your report, you take action. And another advantage is that in that way, you can really enjoy the combined power of the two products. So what's the idea here? Well, the idea is that in a Power BI report, we connect to data like we always do. We get data, we choose a data source, transform it in Power Query if we want, and load it into our data model. Second step is then that inside our report, we can use this Power App. the Powerapp can actually take the context of your report. So it can take the data from the report, it can take all the filters, the cross-filtering works and so on. So that works really nicely. And then finally, this Powerapp can take some action. So here we have all the data sources available that we have in PowerApps, and it can take any action that you would like. Now the cool thing here is that we can make this action here, we can take an action in the same data source as in which we connected in Power BI. So that's, for example, if we have a SQL Server database to which we connect in Power BI, we have a Powerapp that takes an action that does an update, for example, or creates some records in that same data source. And if we use direct query over here in the Power BI report to connect to that data source, we will immediately see the result of the action that the Powerapp apps took inside our Power BI report. Now, how do we do that? First of all, we need to have a Power BI report, we need to connect to data and so on. And then we can create either a new Power App inside our report or add an existing app. Whichever way you do it, you need to open Power Apps once. First of all, here, if you create a new app, Power Apps will create a really simple app for you. And really important there is the Power BI integration component, because this provides the data from Power BI in your Power App. So in that way, using the Power BI integration component, you can use the data from Power BI in your Power App. If you add an existing app, you also should open Power Apps once. It asks you to open it, and then this Power BI integration component will also be added. It's then like a read-only data source, like any other read-only data source in Powerapp, so we can use it to do whatever we want, populate our galleries, populate a label, and so on. Yeah, so finally, if we then have this Powerapp open, we're editing it, we are creating it, there is actually a live data connection between the Power BI report and Powerapp Studio, so you will see the data coming from your Power BI report inside that Powerapp. Okay, so that's a bit of theory. Let's just have a look at how this works in a Power BI report. So I will just shortly start with Power BI Desktop over here. So my idea for this demo is that here in Belgium we have a few problems with Corona contact tracing. I guess it's everywhere difficult, but I decided to help the government a bit by creating here a Power BI report and starting to trace contacts myself, visualize it in a Power BI report with the help of a Power App, and later also Power Automate. So I have two tables in SQL Server. One table where I store data of people who were tested positively on Corona, and one table where I store the contacts that they give up. So I call them when they're tested positively, I ask them who were you in touch with, and the contacts that they provide to me I will store in the given contacts table. Okay. So there is some data in these tables already, and I created a small report here. For example, you can see here that there are currently 11 people in my positive cases table. 7 of those have been contacted, 4 of those have not been contacted yet, and here I can see which 4 still need to be contacted. And so, I can do that right away. Here I show a little bit where they're from and so on. So most from Brussels, some from Antwerp, and some from Leuven. Here on my second page, I then show some more information about the contacts that they provided when I called them. So apparently I called already 3 of those contacts that they provided, and I told them, you know, be careful, be in quarantine, and so on. And I still have to call 3. So that are those 3 that are shown over here. Okay, so my idea is that I will use a Powerapp here. In the end, with that Powerapp, I want to be able to call a person. When I call that person, I want the Powerapp to write to the database that the person is called. And I want to be able to store the contacts that this person give me into this given contacts table so that they show up over here and I can start calling them. So to do that, to create this Powerapp, I can do that from within Power BI Desktop. I can add the PowerApps visual over here, but that's actually not that great of an idea. You will see that it's actually recommended to do this in the Power BI service, because otherwise you can sometimes get some weird behavior. It doesn't all work perfectly, so it's really better to publish a report and do this from within the Power BI service. So that's what I did. I published my report. Here it is, Corona contact tracing. So I will just open it and go into edit mode. So in the meantime, some more positive cases were contacted. There are just 2 left who need to be contacted. And over here, we still have the contacts to be called, the trace contacts, and so on. By the way, maybe I didn't tell, but important is that these 2 tables, the given contacts and the positive cases, I connected to them in SQL Server in direct query mode. So there are direct query tables, meaning that if something changes in these tables, when I interact with the visuals, they will be updated immediately because the direct query will be executed. Okay, good. So let's go ahead and add this Powerapp. So this is the Powerapp visual. I will add it on my page. Okay, the first thing I need to do is provide the data that I actually want to use inside this Powerapp. So for now, I want to use the positive cases table, and I just want to use the, let's say, the full name. Maybe just the full name, actually, that's it already. And let me then create a new Powerapp. So here we can see that it shows me the default environment of my account. I can choose to open an app that I already created or create a new one. So I will create a new one. This sometimes takes a bit of time, getting things ready, loading and so on. So I will just shortly pause my video and get back to you in a moment. Alright, so here we are again. The app was loaded, and as you can see, I'm currently in PowerApps Studio, and over here a very simple Powerapp was created for me. It just has one screen, and on that screen there is a gallery. Okay, and there is also this Power BI integration component, which makes sure that I get the data from my Power BI report here in my Powerapp. So what happened over here is that this gallery over here is populated using this Power BI integration component, so it takes the data from that Power BI integration component. So that's fine here. I will just make it a little bit smaller. What I then want to do is I just want to make sure that in this first stage, very simple app, I want to make sure that if I select here a person, I will call him and I will be able to send to the database that I called the person today, and maybe also my name that I called him. So what I will do is I will just insert here a control on this page. It's a date picker, and I will put it here below. The default date is today, that looks fine. And then I simply want to add a button over here below that. And so if someone clicks the button, I write to the database that the person was called today by me. So let me just click on this button. So I'm not sure how much the people who are watching know about Poweraapps, but for every component that we have here, every component has properties. And these properties we can select here on the top and change. So one of the properties of this button is the text that's on the button. So over here, I will write some text called or something like that. So I call the person, and what I can then also do is make sure that something happens when I click this button, so that these things get written to the database, and that we usually do by an onSelect property. So onSelect, I want something to happen. Now what should happen? I need to write back to the database. I cannot write back to this Power BI integration component. I cannot directly write back to the Power BI report. This is just read-only. I really need to write to the data source, to the SQL database. And so what I will do is I will add here, when I go to data, I will add this as I will add this connection inside my app. So I will look for SQL Server, and over here it's already here, my SQL Server contact tracing database. And I will just select the table with the positive cases so that I can update that table. Okay, let's connect, and that's done. All right, and so then I just need to write here my function to make sure that the update gets done, and for that I will use a patch. The patch function can be used to either create new records in the data source or to update records. So I will use it now to update records. So I will, it takes 3 arguments as you can see here. First of all, I need to provide the source. So that's this SQL Server table. So I refer to it by the name dbo.positivecases. Then I need to specify which record I want to update. And for that I need to actually do a lookup. So I need to look up in the database. When I select here Ben Peters, I need to look up that record in my database. So then I immediately remember that I forgot something, and that's over here in my app. I also need the ID of the person so that I can do a lookup in the database. So I will use the lookup function for that. So the source is again dbo.positivecases, and the condition is then that the ID of the selected person from the gallery in my app should be equal to the ID in the table. So I can do that by referring to gallery1.selected, so the selected item from the gallery, and then I take the ID. That one should be equal to the ID column to the ID value in the table in SQL Server. Okay, so that's the record for which I should do an update. And what is the update then? Well, I want to change the contacted date to be equal to the value over here from this date picker. So date picker one.value. Date picker one dot selected date. And the second thing that I want to update there is I want to change the contacted by value to be equal to the person that is currently logged in. So because that person probably contacted the positive case, so I will write here user dot email address, and that one takes the email address of the currently logged in user. Okay, so I do this patch, and then I just need to do one more thing, and that's make sure that the data in the Power BI reports gets refreshed, and that I can do by using Power BI integration.refresh. And I think that's all that I wanted to do now. So that's a very simple example. Let me just make sure that this is saved. Let's save it. Okay, and let's then have a look here at the Power BI report. Okay, we're getting there. All right. So maybe I will just save this as well and go into reading view to have a bit bigger screen. And then the idea is that I can actually select here one of the persons that I want to call. So let's say I want to call Boris Chapman, or maybe first Tim White. Okay, when I select Tim White over here, the cross-filtering works to my app. So I select him over here as well. I call him today, so that's fine. And when I press the called button, it should be changed in the database, and immediately the report should also be refreshed because I used the refresh function. And we see that indeed right now he is not anymore here. Boris is the only remaining to be contacted person, and currently I contacted, or 10 persons were actually contacted. So I immediately see that refreshed in my report. So that's quite cool. It's just the first step for my app because I actually wanted to make sure that inside my app I can add the context that the persons that I'm calling provide. So I'm just going to another report that I already created, the second stage report. I will just go into edit mode. And there I created this second app. I already created it because it's a bit too much to create it here live, but I will just show you what it looks like so that you understand how it works. Maybe in the meantime I will just pause the recording again because it takes some time. And there we are again. So this is the app that I created. It now contains 2 screens. So I have a first screen with a gallery where I again show all the records from my Power BI report. So this gallery is connected to the Power BI integration component. And then on my second screen, so the idea is that I select here one person, a positive case. Then I move to my second screen, and there I can add contacts for that positive case and submit the contacts. Now, what will happen when I submit the contacts? So for every contact that I use, I will do a patch to, or for every contact that I provide over here, I will do a patch to the database. And this time I will do a patch in my given contacts table. So what will I patch there? I will create a new item in that table. And I will store there the parent ID. So the parent ID, that's actually the ID of the person on which I clicked in that first gallery. I will store the email address that I provided here, the first name, the last name, and the phone number that I provided here for the contact. Then I will do a second patch in my positive cases table because there I want to actually show that I called that person like I did before in the first app. So I want to change the contacted date to today and the contacted by to the logged in user. And then I need to refresh my data, Power BI integration.refresh, and I move back to my previous screen so that I can add data for a new person. Okay, so that's the idea here of my app. Let's just close it and see whether it works. Okay, so let's say that I'm calling Boris Chapman. So I'm clicking here on my report. It gets nicely filtered. Boris Chapman. He provides me the details of his wife, Sarah Chapman. It's Sarah at hotmail.com, and she has some phone number. Okay, let's add another person. For example, he actually was in touch also with his daughter, whose name is Avi Chapman, and her email address is avi@hotmail.com, and some phone number. Okay, so these 2 people should be submitted. When I submit this, I should see changes on this report. Because I called Boris, he should disappear from my to be contacted persons, and I should see him here added to the positive cases that were contacted. So there are indeed 11 now. And when I go to my second page, these 2 contacts should be added over here. Indeed, here we have Avi Chapman, and Sarah Chapman. So they are now in the context to be called, and there are currently 6 contexts to be called. So that's the idea of using a Power App in Power BI. There are some points of attention. First of all, it's important that you create a new Power App from your Power BI report, or use an old Power BI that was created from a Power BI report. Because otherwise you will not get access to the Power BI integration.refresh component. And this is important if you want to refresh your data in the Power BI report. Also, the thing that I showed you was just possible because I used direct query. And with direct query, you will immediately see your refresh data. If I would have used import, I wouldn't immediately see the refresh data in my report. I already mentioned that it's recommended to first publish your report to the service and then create or edit an app, because otherwise you can get some weird behavior. And the last point of attention is that both the report as well as the Power App should be shared with your users in order to see the two. Okay, so short interim conclusion about a Power App in a Power BI report. It seems that you can really immediately act from within your report. You can write back to the data source, which allows for some very interesting scenarios, and you can immediately see the changes reflected in your report if you use direct query and this Power BI integration.refresh thing. Lastly, I just want to mention that you can also turn things around. If you want, you can also add a Power BI dashboard tile inside your app. That's also possible if you start from PowerApps. Alright, so that's it for PowerApps. Then the next thing that I want to discuss is how we can use Power Automate inside Power BI. And so first of all, what's Power Automate? It's this program with which we can set up automated workflows to, for example, synchronize files, get notifications, collect data, and much more. What's great about Power Automate is that it can use, like PowerApps, a lot of different data sources to connect to. And your flow creation also is very intuitive. You use drag and drop. You don't really need any coding. And again, there is lots of integration with other Office 365 products, which is great for this presentation. So there are 2 things that we can do in relation to Power BI that I want to show you. The first thing is we can actually create a data alert on a Power BI dashboard tile, which normally would send a notification and an email if you want, if a certain threshold is reached. With Power Automate, we can actually use this data alert as a trigger and define some other actions that should happen when this data alert is triggered. So it adds some flexibility as to the actions that you want to take after a data-driven alert was triggered. Let me show you that for a moment. Again, I will use the Corona demo that I used so far. Over here, I created a dashboard, and you can see here the context to be called, the names of those, the positive cases to be called, and I actually want to set an alert on the context to be called. Because it gets higher than some number, I want to actually ask for another call agent because the waiting time could get too long. So I'm going to manage alerts over here, and I'm going to add an alert rule. So let's call this demo contacts alert, and we can specify here that if the number over here, the number of contacts to be called, gets above 7, then I actually want to create an alert, and this alert will send an email by default and show up here in Power BI, in the Power BI service. So let's save and close this. But over here you will already see that we can also use Power Automate to trigger this alert. Or to get triggered by this alert. So let's show that in a moment. Let me just first save and close this alert over here. Now I actually already created a flow over here that is triggered by such a data-driven alert. And what I want to happen is that when this alert is triggered, I want to start an approval process. The approval process sends an approval to, let's say, the manager. It's now just specified here as trainer because I can then show you. It shows me the title of the alert, the URL of the alert, and then if the person actually approves, then he will send an email to me saying that I can assign another call agent. So that's my flow, the flow that I defined over here. The only thing I need to do is switch here to the other contacts alert and save my flow. And then we can test it. I'll perform the trigger action. So I now need to make sure that the alert gets triggered. So I actually need to add another contact to be called. I can really easily do that from my second stage contact tracing report. This one here. So I will just add another contact to my database. Let me select one of the positive cases. Let's say that he forgot to mention one person here, Ben Peters. He forgot Adam Peters, his brother, Adam at hotmail.com, and some phone number. So let's submit this. Okay, so that's done. And if we then move to the dashboard and refresh here once, then we should see that there should be 8 contacts to be called, and I hope that the data alert gets triggered then. And if the alert gets triggered, we should see that the flow actually will start running. Okay, so it's actually running. It's just waiting over here for the approval because you know we created this flow where someone needs to approve. So over here, when I go to action items and to approvals, I should actually see an approval demo contacts alert. I can click on it and I can see here threshold has been reached, approved to add another call agent. I can click on the link to see the dashboard tile. So there I should see that there are 8 contacts to be called. Okay, and I'm like, approve, please add one. Okay, confirm. And that will actually send an email also to me again. It's a bit boring, but I just want to show you that I get an email and that I can assign another call agent, so solve the waiting line. So that's what I got here, assign another call agent. Okay, so in that way, I can really define all kinds of actions that should happen inside my flow as a reaction to a data-driven alert. Something else that we can do using Flow in Power BI is we can actually refresh a Power BI dataset using a flow. So instead of scheduling our dataset refresh in the Power BI service, we can make sure that the refresh happens automatically after an event. You have to take into account though that the existing refresh limits still apply. So if you have no Power BI Premium, you can refresh 8 times a day. So let's have a look at an example of that. In my report for the contact tracing, I actually added, maybe I will show it in Power BI Desktop. I actually added another table here, the contact tracers table. And that table is actually imported. It's connected to a SharePoint online list where I just show the names of the contact tracers that are existing in this company. Let's say that over here in my report, I go into edit mode. And I want to show here for each of my contact tracers, so it's their name. I want to show how many positive cases they called. Yeah. Okay, so currently I just have 2 contact tracers, Trainer and Aniek. Whenever a contact tracer is added, I want it to show up here in my report. Let me just switch here to show items with no data, so that if a new person gets added, there is actually one more person leaving, but he didn't have, trace any positive cases yet, but he now shows up in my table as well. So the thing is that this is connected to a SharePoint Online list, this contact tracers, and that cannot be in direct query mode. Here, my given contacts and my positive cases, they are in direct query mode. So immediately when the data changes, these 2 tables changes and it's shown in the report, but it doesn't hold for the SharePoint Online list. So what I want to do is I want to create a flow that actually whenever a new item is added to my SharePoint Online list, refreshes my Power BI dataset. And I created this flow over here. So this is the SharePoint Online list, by the way. I have Trainer, Aniek and Lieve in there. Just shows their email address and the number of hours they worked. So this flow gets triggered whenever an item is created or modified in that SharePoint Online list. And what should happen when that flow is triggered? In that case, my dataset SQL bits should be refreshed. The dataset in SQL bits workspace Corona contact tracing should be refreshed. So let's try that out. Let's just test this here. I'll perform the trigger action and let's add another contact tracer. So let's say that over here my colleague Nico Jacobs is also going to be a contact tracer. And he has not worked yet, so I will save him over here. Okay, so Nico is added. This means that my flow should be triggered because an item was added to my SharePoint Online list, and we can see that indeed my flow runs successfully. So if I go to my Power BI report, I should in principle then see that the data is refreshed if I go to the data set, but maybe if we refresh the report over here, we will also see that if everything worked out fine, if I refresh the report, that Nico gets added here as well. So indeed, he's added over here. My data set has been refreshed because a new item was added in my SharePoint Online list. So that's the last example here of using a flow in Power BI. So I think there are 2 really nice things about this. So first of all, it adds flexibility in response to a data alert in Power BI. Second of all, you can refresh your data set not based on a schedule, but based as a response to an event. Here 2 points of interest maybe. You can also use a flow inside a Power BI app and use that Power BI app inside Power BI. You can also use a flow inside a Powerapp and use that Powerapp even inside your Power BI report. And secondly, there is one more Power BI action that we can use with regard to flow or Power Automate, and that's to push rows of data in a streaming data set. That one I didn't show you, but it's possible as well. All right, so let's finish off here then. I think in conclusion, the functionalities of Power BI can be really extended by the other Power Platform products. So with PowerApps, we can take action right from within our Power BI report, and with Power Automate, we can respond much more flexibly to a data-driven alert or with regard to refreshing our data set. So I think they really make each other even stronger, and I hope that that you saw how in this presentation. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for being here, and I hope you will have a great rest of the day here at SQL Bits Online.